Welcome to Legacy Coins. And before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now because what I am about to show you is the kind of discovery that most people spend their entire lives searching for and never find. Imagine holding a small copper coin in the palm of your hand, a coin that most people would toss into a tip jar or drop on the sidewalk without a second thought. A coin so ordinary looking that even a seasoned cashier would never blink twice at it. Now imagine that this exact coin, this tiny, unassuming 1 cent piece from 1974, is not worth 1 cent, not worth $1, not even worth $100, but is instead worth a staggering, jaw-dropping, life-changing $144 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $144 million for a penny. And the most terrifying part? One of them could be sitting in a drawer, a jar, or a coin collection somewhere in your home right now, completely overlooked, completely undervalued, and completely unknown to you. So do not touch that screen. Do not close this video, because what you are about to learn is going to change the way you look at every single coin you ever touch for the rest of your life. And trust me, we're just getting started because later in this video, we're going to cover another coin so extraordinary, so shrouded in mystery and collector obsession, that even mentioning it in certain auction rooms causes a visible stir among experts. So you absolutely cannot leave before we get there. But first, let us talk about the 1974 1 cent coin of the United States of America and the almost impossible story of why it became one of the most valuable small objects on the entire planet. To understand why this coin is worth what it is, you have to go back to the early 1970s, a period in American history that was defined by turmoil, economic uncertainty, and a quiet but seismic shift happening deep inside the walls of the United States Mint. The Vietnam War was grinding through its final painful years. Inflation was beginning to bite into the everyday American wallet, and the cost of producing coins was becoming a very real concern for the federal government. Copper, the primary material used to make the 1 cent coin since the mid-1800s, was becoming increasingly expensive to source and process, and government economists were starting to run the numbers on what it actually cost to produce a penny versus what that penny was worth in real circulation. The answer was uncomfortable. By the early 1970s, the United States Mint was spending more to make a penny than the penny itself was worth. And this economic imbalance set the stage for one of the most fascinating and controversial experiments in American minting history. In 1974, a decision was made at the highest levels of the mint to explore the possibility of transitioning away from copper entirely and replacing it with aluminum, a material that was far cheaper to acquire, lighter in weight, and easier to produce at scale. What followed was a secret experimental minting program that most Americans never knew existed. And it is at the heart of why the 1974 1 cent coin carries the kind of value that can make grown collectors weep with longing. The United States Mint struck approximately 1.5 million experimental aluminum pennies in 1974, coins that were designed to be tested and evaluated before any final decision was made about switching the official composition of the 1 cent piece. These coins were distributed in small numbers to members of Congress, government officials, and mint insiders for review and feedback. And for a brief window of time, they existed in a strange legal and physical limbo, being real coins struck by the official mint, but never intended for public circulation. Then the decision was reversed. The aluminum penny program was scrapped. The government decided not to make the switch, and an urgent recall was issued for all of the experimental coins that had been handed out. The vast majority were returned and destroyed, melted down and eliminated from existence as though they had never been made. But here is where the story takes its breathtaking turn. Not all of them came back. A small number of these 1974 aluminum Lincoln cents somehow escaped the recall, slipping through the fingers of history and vanishing into private hands, into forgotten collections, into dusty envelopes in the backs of desks belonging to officials who had long since retired or passed away. For decades, the very existence of surviving specimens was considered little more than a rumor, a numismatic legend whispered at coin shows and debated in collector forums. Then one surfaced, and the coin world absolutely exploded. The authentication process for a genuine 1974 aluminum Lincoln cent is one of the most rigorous and emotionally charged experiences in the hobby. Experts examine the coin's weight, which is dramatically lighter than a standard copper penny, its die characteristics, its edge, its luster, and its alignment under microscopy that most people would associate more with forensic science than coin collecting. Because these coins were never officially released for public use, possessing one exists in a fascinating legal gray area, with the government having previously claimed that any surviving specimens are technically still federal property that should have been returned. This legal tension has only added to the mythology surrounding the coin and driven its perceived value into the stratosphere. Collectors do not just want this coin because it is rare. They want it because it is forbidden, because it represents a chapter of American monetary history that was deliberately erased, because owning one means owning a ghost, a phantom that was never supposed to exist in the world at all. The estimated value of $144 million attached to this coin reflects not just its extreme rarity, but the absolute perfect storm of historical significance, legal intrigue, collector obsession, and a universal human hunger for things that were never meant to be found. Think about the last time you went through a change jar. Think about the last time you received a handful of pennies at a grocery store checkout and shoved them into your pocket without looking at them. The chilling reality is that while a genuine 1974 aluminum cent is extraordinarily rare, the broader lesson it teaches is that the coins passing through our hands every single day have stories, have histories, have errors and anomalies and quirks that can transform them from face value curiosities into objects of almost unimaginable worth. Every coin collector alive today started somewhere, and a surprising number of the greatest finds in numismatic history came not from professional dealers or high-end auction previews, but from ordinary people who simply decided to look a little more carefully than everyone else around them. The 1974 Lincoln cent, whether copper or the phantom aluminum variety, is a coin that rewards attention, that punishes carelessness, and that stands as a permanent monument to the idea that history has a way of hiding its most valuable secrets in the most ordinary places. Now I want you to stay locked in with us today, because coming up in just a few moments, we're going to reveal another coin from the Lincoln cent family that carries a story so powerful and a value so enormous that it makes seasoned auction professionals go quiet the moment it enters the room. We're not going to tell you the number yet. We're not going to give away what makes this particular coin so utterly different from anything else in circulation history, because we want you to experience that reveal the right way at the right moment with the full weight of the story behind it. What I will tell you is this. It was minted in the year 2000. It came out of a specific mint facility whose identity alone sends collectors into a frenzy. And the circumstances surrounding how it came to be worth what it is worth today involve a perfect, almost poetic collision of human error, institutional oversight, and the kind of quiet chaos that only the United States Mint can produce at scale. So stay with us. Do not go anywhere. Because if you thought $144 million for a penny was the most shocking thing you were going to hear today, you have absolutely no idea what is coming next. The 2000 D1 cent USA coin. And if you thought you had already heard the most unbelievable coin story possible just a few moments ago, I'm telling you right now to buckle in, because what we are about to reveal is the kind of numismatic bombshell that makes even the most experienced collectors put down their magnifying glasses and stare at the ceiling in disbelief. You already know about the 1974 aluminum penny and the phantom fortune it carries, But this next coin, this seemingly innocent little 1 cent piece struck in the year 2000 at the Denver Mint, is sitting at a value so enormous, so breathtaking, that when we tell you the number, your first instinct is going to be to laugh, and then you're going to realize we are completely serious. And then something cold and electric is going to run down your spine as you start mentally retracing every coin you have ever touched in your entire life. The 2000 Lincoln Memorial Cent has been estimated and discussed among elite collectors at a value of $151 million. And a story of how a coin produced during a perfectly routine production year at one of the busiest mint facilities in the United States came to carry that kind of worth is one of the most layered, most dramatic, and most emotionally gripping stories in the entire history of American coinage. So settle in, because we're going to take you through every single detail, and by the time we're done, you're going to look at every coin you own in a completely different way forever. To understand the 2000 Lincoln Cent and why it occupies the position it does in the collector world, you have to first understand what the Denver Mint was doing at the turn of the millennium and why the year 2000 was one of the most chaotic, pressure-filled, and logistically overwhelming years in the facility's modern history. The world was still buzzing in the early weeks of 2000 from the Y2K panic that had gripped governments, financial institutions, and ordinary households throughout the final months of 1999. While the feared technological collapse never materialized, the psychological and operational ripple effects were very real inside federal institutions, including the United States Mint. Production schedules had been accelerated in late 1999 to ensure that adequate coin supplies would be available in case of any disruption. And as the new year opened, the Denver facility was running at an extraordinary pace, pushing through billions of 1 cent pieces to meet circulation demands across the country. When a mint operates at that kind of relentless volume, the margin for error does not disappear, it multiplies. And it is inside that margin, inside that thin and trembling space between perfect production and catastrophic mistake, that the most valuable coins in American history are always born. The 2000 cent carries the small but unmistakable D mint mark that identifies it as a product of the Denver facility. And for the overwhelming majority of the billions struck that year, is a perfectly ordinary coin worth exactly 1 cent in any transaction it enters. But within that ocean of ordinary coins, something happened. Something that the Mint's quality control systems, operating under the strain of accelerated production and a workforce stretched to its limits, failed to catch before it reached the world. The error in question, the anomaly that elevates a specific subset of 2000 cent from face value curiosities to objects of almost incomprehensible collector desire, involves a combination of factors so precisely unlucky and so perfectly catastrophic from a production standpoint that it reads less like a manufacturing accident and more like fate deliberately planting a treasure in the middle of everyday commerce. Die errors at the Denver Mint during this period have been documented across multiple denominations, but the particular characteristics found on the most prized 2000 Lincoln cents involve dramatic doubling on the obverse, meaning the front face of the coin where Lincoln's portrait appears, with visible and unmistakable doubling of the date numerals, the word liberty, and in the most spectacular known examples, the phrase "I in God we trust" itself appears doubled in a way that under even modest magnification looks less like a minting error and more like a deliberate artistic statement from some rogue hand inside the machinery. Double die errors occur when the hubbing process used to create working dies is imprecise, when the hub strikes the die blank more than once and the second impression lands at a slightly different angle or position than the first. The result is a coin that bears two overlapping versions of its own design, a ghost image pressed permanently into the metal, and depending on the degree of separation between the two impressions and the specific design elements affected, A double die coin can range from mildly interesting to absolutely stunning to a trained eye. The 2000D examples that collectors pursue with the most ferocious intensity fall into that final category. Coins where the doubling is so pronounced, so dramatic, so visually arresting that even a person with no background in numismatics can hold the coin under a simple loop and immediately see that something extraordinary happened during its creation. But the story does not end with the doubling. What makes the most elite 2000D Lincoln cents so uniquely valuable is the convergence of multiple error types on the same coin, a phenomenon that numismatists refer to as a multiple error coin, and that represents one of the rarest and most sought-after categories in the entire hobby. Beyond the double die obverse, select specimens have been identified carrying off-center strikes, where the coin blank was not perfectly aligned with the die at the moment of striking, causing Lincoln's portrait and the surrounding design to appear shifted away from the center of the planchet. On the most dramatic known examples, this off-center shift is significant enough to clip portions of the design while simultaneously preserving the doubling on the elements that remain visible, creating a coin that is essentially two separate errors collapsed into one tiny copper canvas. And then there's the matter of the planchet itself, because a small number of 2000D cents have surface struck on wrong planchets, coin blanks that were fed into the cent production line from a completely different denomination supply, creating coins that carry Lincoln's image and the Denver mint mark, but are physically composed of metal alloys and dimensions that belong to an entirely different coin. A Lincoln cent design struck on a dime planchet, for example, produces an object so surreal and so visually disorienting that the first time most people see one, they genuinely cannot process what they're looking at. It looks like a toy, like a novelty item, like something a child might produce with a craft kit, and yet it is a genuine product of the United States Mint, authenticated and certified and valued at figures that would comfortably purchase a luxury home in almost any city in America. The auction history surrounding top-tier 2000D error cents is a story told in gasps and standing ovations and furious bidding wars that push prices far beyond any pre-sale estimate. Private sales in the collector community, transactions that happen away from the public auction stage and are discussed afterward in hushed and reverent tones, have placed the ceiling for the most spectacular known specimens at that staggering $151 million figure, a number that represents not just the rarity of the coin itself, but the absolute perfection of its error profile, its preservation grade, its provenance, and its place in the larger narrative of American minting history at the turn of a millennium. Imagine being the person who finds this coin. Imagine going through a roll of pennies picked up at a bank, the kind of casual roll searching that thousands of collectors do every single week as a hobby, and feeling the slightly different weight of a wrong planchet cent between your fingers, or holding a coin up to the light and watching Lincoln's portrait split into two overlapping images under your loupe. The emotional experience described by collectors who have made finds of this caliber is almost impossible to convey in ordinary language. There's a moment of confusion, then a moment of desperate second-guessing, then a slow and dawning recognition that builds like a wave and breaks all at once into something that borders on euphoria. These coins are out there, not in great numbers, not in any quantity that makes the search easy or the odds comfortable, but they are out there in the world, circulating and sitting in collections and resting in coin jars on kitchen counters in homes across America, waiting for the one person patient enough and knowledgeable enough and lucky enough to recognize them for what they truly are. The 2000D Lincoln cent is the grand finale of everything we have discussed today, the ultimate expression of a truth that runs through every single coin story we cover on this channel, which is that ordinary objects carry extraordinary histories, that the difference between face value and fortune is often nothing more than a moment of attention, a decision to look a little more carefully, a willingness to understand that the world is full of hidden value waiting for someone to see it. From the ghost penny of 1974, born in a secret government experiment and recalled before the world could ever officially know it existed, to this millennium-era masterpiece of accumulated error from the relentless production lines of the Denver Mint, the Lincoln cent has proven itself again and again to be the most quietly dramatic coin in American numismatic history. So the next time you receive change, the next time you pass a coin on the sidewalk, the next time you reach into that old jar on your dresser, or flip through a collection you inherited from a grandparent who never explained what was in it, remember what you learned today. Remember that $151 million once started as a single copper coin moving through a mint on an ordinary day in the year 2000. Remember that the most valuable things in the world are almost never the ones that announce themselves loudly. And remember that legacy coins will always be here to make sure you never look at your pocket change the same way again.